Everyone joining us online. My name is Vladislav Berezovsky, member of the board at Carbon Zero, and I'm pleased to welcome you today at COP30 online side event, which was organized by the UN Global Compact National Network in Russia. Thank you to all speakers and everyone in the audience, both in this webinar room and those who are watching us live broadcast on YouTube in Russian and YouTube version in English. Please note that our session is available in both Russian and English, so you could switch by your preferences, choose the language. Today's session is about energy transition and sustainable development, climate transition opportunities for the real economy. This is a very broad topic, but today we will focus on Russia and BRICS countries. Our countries have different energy mixes, different levels to access to technologies, and some specific economic structure. Usually when we speak about energy transition in BRICS context, we use terms as just energy transition, because it's not only about the emission and technologies, but also about social impacts, affordability, and security of supply. For example, in Russia, we have a large system of heat supply that is connected with the energy system, and it's hard to switch on renewables with one click. Today, let me at this session, our experts. Let me introduce them. This is Mr. Alex Benkenstein, Program Head, South African Institute of International Affairs. Anastasia Shirokograd, Advisor, Russian Energy Agency. Polina Levon, Director of Sustainable Development, Rosatom. Alexei Spirin, Director of Climate Regulation and International Certification, Rusal. Arseniy Evtukhov, Head of Public Bond Analysis, Совкомбанк, and Ilya Nagaitsev, Project Manager, FHUD. Let us begin. Our first expert is Alex Benkenstein, and it's as a first speaker, you have like a keynote speech about energy transition and energy security. Is there contradiction in terms, or they are support each other? Please, Alex, floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you so much to engage in this opportunity again in the context of BRICS and the very important discussions happening in Belém. I do have colleagues at Belém. I'm not there myself. Many of you will know South Africa is hosting the G20, and we're playing a supporting role there. And that in itself has provided some insight to the challenges around multilateral responses on climate and energy transition at the moment. But speaking as a South African, I think it's useful to recap on the unique contexts. Vladislav has mentioned that, our countries all have those unique contexts, and whatever frameworks we use, approaches we use, must be able to incorporate that diversity. I think by now everyone is well aware that South Africa is highly dependent on coal, although that picture is slowly changing. Until about last year, it was upwards of 85%. That has come down somewhat now in terms of electricity production that relies on coal. It's also an important export product, and we have more than 90,000 people working in the coal sector broadly. This is in the context of a relatively small economy that has high levels of unemployment and high levels of inequality. So the other dimension of that is that South Africa was, of course, the first country to announce a Just Energy Transition Partnership. Every time I mention that partnership, I do always want to emphasize that the totality of our just transition planning is not encompassed by that partnership, and so it shouldn't be read as a something that is imposed by foreign donors who are supporting this transition. That partnership sits within the context of a just transition framework, which is a policy framework developed in our country in a consultative manner, and it forms part of a broader framework called the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which also has its own linked implementation plan. And those frameworks have, the development of those frameworks have allowed for deep consultation across various sectors and different stakeholder groups within society, and allowed for prioritization and a real deep societal dialogue around what the energy transition means and what a just transition would look like in South Africa. And of course, there are national dimensions, subnational dimensions, and global dimensions of that just transition. But I do think this is important to highlight that context. It is also a country that is moved quite quickly in recent years, in part driven by our energy crisis, to expand renewables, but where the very idea of the energy transition, the need for a just transition, the pace of that transition is very much still contested. And I know that's true for many of our BRICS countries and countries throughout the world. But I think when we talk about the energy transition, it's useful to go back to first principles, because I do find that a lot of critiques of the just transition um, is framed as if we're speaking about the just transition as an event. And the just transition is not an event, it's a process. We have core principles within the UNFCCC framework that are really fundamental to everything that happens there. We have the idea of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. When we talk about NDCs, there's been a lot of talk about NDCs and what that means, but let's remind ourselves what that acronym means: nationally determined. Yes, there is a single goal that we move towards. Climate change remains a pressing global challenge. We can't afford to not act whatsoever. But the institutional framework that has been established provides the space for countries to determine the pace and the process through which they navigate this transition. And so often critiques of the just transition seem to present it as, well, you know, we're in South Africa's case, 80% reliant on coal. There's no way that within 2 years we're going to be able to just close down all those coal plants and supply sufficient electricity. The reality is no one's expecting that, and no one's asking that. We know that India has a net zero goal to 2070, South Africa to 2050. So we lose sight of the timeline sometimes that we're talking about when we speak about the just transition. I think that's a necessary corrective, because so much of the discussion around climate change is built around reinforcing the sense of urgency. And again, I want to be careful with my words here, because this is an urgent problem and it's a global problem. And certainly we strive to be as ambitious as we can. But let's not pretend that the global climate framework that we've developed over many years through the UNFCCC is something that it's not. I do think that this idea, that's also very prominent within discussions within BRICS about technological neutrality, is important to remind ourselves as well. There is going to be no single one technology that solves this crisis. And we've got to be very careful of, placing all our bets on one technology. The reality is that the future that we're moving towards is going to be diverse sources of energy. And we've got to think about and create the systems that allow for the investment, the research and development, the experimentation that permits those technologies to develop and to find their rightful place within this energy ecosystem. And again, here I think it's important to focus. So much of the talk is about subsidies and whether fossil fuels are receiving more subsidies than renewables. Certainly, we want to try and find a space where investment in all energy technology and solutions, including carbon capture, storage, things that are going to help us reduce emissions, that needs to be encouraged. And I think maybe more concretely, we can focus on the barriers that still exist, whether those are technological, regulatory, financial, address the barriers that are making it harder to invest in energy, whether that be solar, wind, or whatever sort of technology. Because what we are seeing is that the technology and the economics of energy investment is shifting very quickly. There's a reason that over 90% of investment in energy technology last year was in renewables, and we've just seen an astronomical surge in investment in renewables over the last few years. The technology is advancing at an incredible pace. It's modular, it's fast, and in a certain sense, we are very close to or at maybe have passed a tipping point where the economic case is self-explanatory if we address the barriers. So I think this is a really important element of the discussion that we need to have. The energy security side of what I want to address is complex. We know that here in South Africa, we have many decades of coal-based power supply. Other BRICS members and other countries across the world with abundant fossil fuel resources, the energy security question is very pressing. It's also not as simple as to say no one owns the wind and no one owns the sun. So your energy security questions go away when you rely on renewables, because we know that the issue of critical minerals and certain supply chain issues, the huge concentration of green technology, renewable energy technology, production and value chain, specifically within China at the moment, does create certain vulnerabilities and dependencies that are concerning. My argument is that I think this is not necessarily a case against renewables per se. It means that we need to have a discussion and really focus our energy and also our investment into looking at diversifying those value chains, looking at supporting local production, local technology development, local capacity. There are certain challenges. We all know about the critical mineral side of things, which is not going to go away overnight. But there are new partnerships forming. There's new investments being made, and I think we need to take those questions seriously. So I do think the relationship with renewable energy value chains is going to be a core part of how we address this question of energy security. But some of the other elements that tie into this argument, intermittency, energy storage, we have seen technological developments that are moving us towards a solution. Maybe we haven't quite arrived at that point, but it is going to require regional cooperation. It is going to require a real rethink about energy infrastructure, not only the production, but of course the transmission. Often our renewable energy sources are not in the same locations as where our current transmission infrastructure is. There's huge potential for collaboration within regions, across countries, in terms of energy supply to address the intermittency challenge. And then, of course, energy storage solutions are improving every day, and investments in that is making a real difference to how we think about security of supply and how this balance plays out. So in all of this picture, I think the key argument, I think, is to understand that countries do have the space to chart their own path. No one's asking anyone to transition 100% to renewables within the space of 1 or 2 or 3 years. It's important to have a plan. It's important to think through the strategic implications, not only in terms of energy security, but in terms of broader international alliances and partnerships, what that means at the national level. And then, very importantly, as I said, let's at least, at a minimum, at least address some of these barriers, regulatory, financial, technological barriers that we're facing for scaling renewables and assisting the transition. So that even if it's not a question of subsidizing to that extent, or, I mean, this becomes a very controversial subject, but I think we can at least agree that where there are investors, research institutes who want to move forward, who see the potential, let's at least not stand in their way. Let's make sure that that regulatory environment is addressed. Thank you. I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Yeah, thank you for your speech. Just a short question from me. I also would like to recall that for our audience that you could ask your questions or write your comments on the platform where you're watching us, and we will ask this question also to our speakers. Alex, you mentioned that energy transition is a process, and you could do it in like 2 or 3 years. So each country should develop a plan for the transition. But you also noted that it's important to share technologies, to synchronize regulation somehow. So should countries, for example, in BRICS platform, to at least to try to develop it together to find to make this place for sharing technologies, knowledge, etc.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've seen now under the Brazilian BRICS presidency this year, I think things have advanced. Of course, it's not starting from scratch. There are over multiple years, including, of course, Russia's BRICS presidency. Real important work in terms of cooperation on energy. I mean, let's also be frank that there are certain shall we say, geostrategic concerns that also play out within the BRICS group that perhaps makes the sharing of certain technologies or discussions about agreements regarding the flow of resources might make that somewhat difficult. So yes, it's absolutely essential. I think we need to keep building progressively year on year. I hope and I believe that we will see that conversation continue into the Indian BRICS presidency next year. And I think also we need to consider, of course, that BRICS is not a purely high-level political process, as many of us in this conversation know. There is collaboration on research. There are collaborations across business, multiple stakeholder groups, and of course the energy transition is progressing in many spheres. And I think in each of these spheres within the BRICS group, we can continue to push and explore, find opportunities to move forward while we continue to push for that higher level political agreements around cooperation, technology sharing, shared research and development, and so forth.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for your contribution. So now we're moving to our next speaker, Anastasia Shirokograd from the Russian Energy Agency, to continue speaking about the BRICS. Russian Energy Agency made a research project within the BRICS Energy Research Platform, about just energy transition in BRICS countries. So, Anastasia, could you share with us the insight of your research?
Yeah, for sure. I hope you see the screen shared.
Yeah, we see.
Okay. First, I would say that my speech will somehow correlate with the previous one. You will find some similar statements, and it is, of course, unsurprisingly. Let me introduce myself. I'm Anastasia Sharkograd, representing the Russian Secretariat of the BRICS Energy Research Cooperation Platform. And our secretariat is based on the Russian Energy Agency by the Ministry of Energy. Let me try. Yeah, so there is a little plan of my presentation. I will show you the structure of the BRICS Energy Dialogue. Then I will introduce the mechanism of the BRICS research cooperation platform. And then we will talk about the Just Energy Transition report that was prepared under the Russian presidency in BRICS last year. So, first of all, I would like to thank the Brazilian presidency in BRICS, who is also the president of COP this year, for the work in Energy Dialogue, because this year we updated the roadmap for BRICS energy cooperation up to 2030, which, among other things, reaffirms the governance and decision-making processes. The full version of the roadmap is available on the website of the Brazilian presidency, and I'm not sure that the QR code is seeable, but anyway, it could lead you to the document. As you see on the scheme, the BRICS Energy Dialogue is governed by the BRICS energy ministers who hold meetings once a year. At the same time, there is the Committee of Senior Energy Officials who coordinate the implementation of the roadmap, formulates proposals for energy ministers, and reports them on the results. As for the BRICS Energy Research Cooperation Platform, that is briefly called BRICS ERCP, it serves as an efficient platform for interaction and practical work with a broad mandate in different areas. For that reason, it can be definitely called as the main mechanism of the BRICS Energy Dialogue. A few words about the BRICS ERCP. It is a network of research institutions, energy companies, and individual experts providing the expertise in current energy issues. The platform started its work in 2019 with the first report published in 2020. Since that time, the BRICS RCP includes more than 100 organizations among BRICS member countries that are coordinated with the national secretariats. The main objectives of the BRICS RCP is to achieve sustainable development, ensure implementation of the SDG 7, strengthen energy security, and ensure a greater role in the global energy agenda. As you can see on the next slide, the cooperation within BRICS RCP includes research and practical activities. The latter includes joint work on 15 work streams that are coordinated by national secretariats. As for Russia, we coordinate the activities of the following work streams. They are natural gas, skills for energy transition, energy research, and technological cooperation. The key step for BRICS RCP was made in 2024 as the energy ministers approved the working plans for 2 work streams that are highlighted on the list. They are skills and technological cooperation. A very important part of the BRICS RCP is its research activities. Since 2020, we published 10 reports on different topics that are on global energy agenda. The QR code will also lead you to all reports published in this period. A report includes the information provided by the BRICS member country, and it is a common practice to use the national data for the national part. While it's worth mentioning that it is BRICS presidency who proposes the topics for a report to be prepared during its presidency. The National Secretariat is also responsible for coordination of the work on this report. And now we are moving to the report that was prepared under the Russian presidency in BRICS in 2024, and that was coordinated by the Russian Energy Agency as the National Secretariat. Well, there were some reasons for us as the chairing country to propose this topic for the report. The first one is, quite obvious. It is the enlargement of BRICS. 5 more countries joined the group. That resulted in a higher role of our countries in the global energy agenda. On the right, you can see the figures that demonstrate the role of BRICS countries in global energy agenda. While there is evident leadership of our countries in different energy spheres, approximately 40% of oil, natural gas, renewables, and more than 70% of coal in both energy consumption and production. Moreover, on the slide, there is a forecast made by the experts of the Energy Research Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences. According to it, with the global energy demand rising, the share of BRICS countries in consumption and production will increase by 2050. While these figures enhance the responsibility of implementation of just energy transition. The second reason is the report that was prepared in 2023 under the presidency of the South Africa. It demonstrated the situation in energy labor markets in BRICS countries and challenges that we face in energy transition. That inspired us to propose BRICS countries to develop the topic of just energy transition. And the third reason is the lack of common approach to just energy transition in general, because just energy transition was not mentioned in key documents of the BRICS Energy Dialogue, while since 2015, we have collected a basement to formulate our understanding of just energy transition. And finally, we prepared this report. The QR code on the slide will lead you to the online version, and it encompasses the national approaches to just energy transition, policy measures that somehow encourage just energy transition in each BRICS country. And well, it was prepared in 2024, so we don't have the part of Indonesia, of course. And I also would like to highlight that the national part is prepared by each BRICS country, so it represents its official position to the just energy transition. The main outcome of the report is 7 principles of just energy transition that were further approved by BRICS energy ministers during the ministerial meeting in September 2024. Well, this slide contains these principles, and to make sum up, BRICS countries stand for the just energy transition that is prioritized with the national circumstances, with the use of all available fuels and technological solutions. They take into account transitional fuels, pay attention to the universal access to technologies and funding, stable employment, and need for cooperation that is based on equity, common benefit, mutual assistance, and respect. Well, the report that was prepared last year, of course, has some outcomes that we see this year, and I hope that we will see for next years, for next periods. The first one, of course, is the roadmap for BRICS energy cooperation up to 2030 that I mentioned before. Well, it defined just energy transition as one of essential backdrops. Without the report, it is unlikely that the just energy transition was even mentioned, or otherwise we could spend a lot of time for defining it with the risk not to find the common ground in shorter term during the discussions on the document. Also, we'd like to to pay attention to the Brazilian presidency this year, that in energy sphere, we developed the topic of just energy transition, holding 3 technical seminars that were aimed to share our experience and find areas of cooperation in financing, energy systems, and decarbonization in oil and gas sector towards just energy transition. And also, I'd like to highlight that the Brazilian presidency proposed to develop the topic of report, and to have 2 more reports on just energy transition with the specification on new and sustainable fuels. And the second one is access to energy services. It is not published yet, but I hope that it will be made very soon. And finally, it is worth mentioning about the work in the work stream called Skills for Energy Transition. I mentioned before that energy ministers approved work plans for 2 work streams. Among them was the work stream called Skills for Energy Transition. It was decided that, firstly, developing the topic of just energy transition, BRICS members will create a video course on just energy transition that will demonstrate the main outcomes of the report in video. And also, it was decided to create a second part of the report that was prepared under the presidency of the South Africa about the energy transition skills. And the work is going on. It will contain the national parts for 5 new members, and also it will update the conclusions and recommendations with all parties that are in BRICS. And as for the future, of course, we have a lot of work to do with the discussing just energy transition, and I hope that with the enlargement of BRICS, with including new members and creating a new category of participation as partner countries, we could develop our discussions, continue them, and update it according to the current agenda within the BRICS and within the global trends. So I would like to thank you for giving me the floor once again. And I also hope that the participants and the just listeners would like to join the BRICS RCP. We are ready for the cooperation. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Just a short question about the research result. You mentioned that you found that BRICS countries have quite different approaches to reach energy transition, but we still will have a roadmap for BRICS energy cooperation, right? So it will somehow highlight that we discussed before, the possibilities for energy, for technology transfers, etc.
Well, as I said, BRICS RCP is considered as a main mechanism of the BRICS energy dialogue, and the roadmap is focused mostly on the cooperation within the BRICS RCP. That contains the practical cooperation within expert groups. There are several areas of cooperation that were highlighted. And I said there are several work streams. They can be expanded if there is the necessity of it according to the roadmap. And as for some milestones that are also included in this roadmap, they are concerned mostly on the BRICS RCP and the for finding the solutions to come to the to follow just energy transition, including the financing processes, but it is just on the work to not the current steps, but the some more expert work, I would say.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, now we move on to Paulina Leon, Director of Sustainable Development at Rosatom. In Russia, nuclear energy provides about a fifth part of the total electricity generation, and play a vital role for not only the decarbonization sector, but also energy security, because Rosatom develops nuclear technology, builds nuclear power plants, and operate them, not only in Russia, but abroad. So, Paulina, could you please share with us your position about the role of nuclear energy as a decarbonization tool for the real sector of the economy?
Thank you very much, Vladislav. With pleasure. Thank you for a chance to speak today and to share our industrial experience. So I am going very briefly to cover the specific tools, specific mechanisms that we're trying to implement to include nuclear energy. So let me remind you, next slide, please, remind you the key figures about nuclear energy, just to describe that nuclear is really one of the cleanest sources of electricity in regard of existing technologies. So according to the UN IPCC estimates, the nuclear is the number 2 right after the wind power in regard of life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, with very low figures. And according to our own Rosatom estimates, because we have quite a huge park of nuclear power plants in operation in Russia, we see that the final figure is really even lower than 12 grams to 2 grams per kilowatt hours, and for Rosatom nuclear power plants we have about 5 grams to 2 per kilowatt hour. That's really low, frankly speaking. And the fact is that currently almost every politician in the world, every representative of energy sector cannot ignore the fact that nuclear really contributes to the clean energy transition. But let us move to the next slide. We need to include nuclear into specific tools, into specific green regulation and specific mechanism to make nuclear being recognized within other low carbon sources. What I mean that we have national determined contribution, which were already mentioned today. We have different tools like green certificates of energy origin. We have developing emission trading systems market, both national and international, and we see that sometimes nuclear is missed, because you know that historically sometimes nuclear was not in line with the green and renewable sources. So that's kind of regulation trick, but we here at this very point. So what we're doing in Rosatom, we're trying to negotiate, to present nuclear as low carbon sources of electricity and make it recognized through the green regulation, as well as renewables are already recognized and included. So let us move to the next slide. And for example, let me start from the national determined contribution. What we have right now. Today, there are 31 countries in the world which already operates nuclear power plants, and up to 50 countries more, they are considering developing nuclear projects in next decades by 2050. But the fact is that even in the updated NDCs, which were needed to be updated this year, just to present the new net zero ambition at COP30. We see that right now only 20 countries in the world include nuclear energy explicitly in their nationally determined contributions, and that's a pity for us, because we understand that if nuclear is included, it could be accounted, evaluated as a contributor to this NDC performance. And otherwise, we have the situation that country do operate or develop nuclear energy project. It has this low carbon energy, but it cannot benefit from it in regard of reporting of approaching its national determined contribution goals. So that's a bit tricky question, but nevertheless, we do insist that nuclear energy should be explicitly included in the NDCs of every country which is already operates or is going to operate nuclear power plant. And my next point, the next slide, is that there is developing nowadays such a mechanism as certificates of energy origin, and these green certificates help industrial companies to compensate, to prove the carbon footprint from energy of energy consumed is low carbon and green. So many countries, and also there is a IREC system, international certificate trading system, which has this option of to issue and to buy and sell these green certificates, but not many countries yet do include nuclear in these green certificates trading systems. Also, that's quite controversial point, because as I said, there are already 31 countries in the world which do operate nuclear, but still there are only 7 countries, including Russia, which put this option of issuing nuclear certificates at their certificates of energy origin platforms. But the good news is that, for example, the IREC system, it do recognize nuclear energy, and you can buy nuclear energy certificates from IREC. And we issue these nuclear certificates as Rosatom since last year, right after the Russian national certificates trading system has been started. And we have, for example, this year we have a chance to cover the scope 2 carbon footprint of Russian energy week. So we see that nuclear certificates could be of use. And for example, the same idea of covering the carbon footprint scope 2 of a large international event was performed at the Olympic Games last year, when EDF covered the carbon footprint of scope 2 with hydro certificates. And we insist that nuclear is also could be of help in this situation. And my final point, and the next slide please, is that nuclear energy, thanks to its low carbon nature, should have a chance to be a part of the emission trading systems. There are many different and emerging and developing ETS systems all over the world. There are voluntary markets, national markets, international market. Currently is negotiating the Paris Agreement 6.4 international trading market system. So we see that most of emission trading systems in the world, they do recognize clean energy projects based on renewables. But there is still no any national or international emission trading system which recognize nuclear energy project. We understand that there are certain constraints in regard of nuclear energy projects. Normally there's huge amount of energy produced, and that's not fit very well the requirements of energy trading systems. But nevertheless, we as Rosatom and we as a part of international nuclear energy sector, we do develop the new product that is small modular reactors. That's much more smaller than the large nuclear energy projects, and so that's why we insist, and now we're moving to improve, to develop the special methodology for climate project based on SMR, small modular reactors. So that's how we think we can contribute to the efficient climate energy transition, both in Russia and all over the world, thanks to nuclear energy projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot for that view, a very practical view on the role of nuclear power plant. Could I ask you a question? You said about certificates, and
Yes.
as I know, GHG protocol is updating their guidance about scope 2 accounting and discussing match consumption and production of electricity with certificates in 24/7. So is it good for nuclear power plant? Is it make their participation at certificates market easier because your constant value of production?
Yes, that's quite a good news for us, and especially in those regions when we operate our nuclear power plant. That's in Russia. That's central territory of Russia. So yes, that's quite a supportive news, and we hope that nuclear certificates would be of demand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you a lot. So our next speaker is Alexey Spirin, who is Director of Climate Regulation and International Certification at Rusal. And I suppose Alexey could offer us a dual perspective, dual point of view from N+ group as one of the largest independent hydropower producer, and Rusal as a large industrial consumer. So you also use some instruments, green certificates, to ensure that Rusal use renewable energy. Could you please share your experience in that?
Hello, everyone. So if you don't mind, I will speak Russian.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Rusal является частью.
Well, Rusal is part of M+ group. This is a large international energy and metallurgy holding company. So it consists of a big metallurgy company called Rusal that produces aluminum. And the next area in which we work is the electric power production, and 80% of electric power in our holding is produced at hydro electric power stations, which are huge and which we have in the major rivers of Siberia. This makes it possible to supply the energy to the aluminum facilities of Rusal, and it makes it possible to ensure a low carbon footprint. That is, Rusal can produce aluminum with a low carbon footprint, and we have a special brand, Allow brand, that roughly, if you talk of the full carbon footprint, is twofold lower than the average carbon footprint in the world for primary aluminum. So generally, talking of the challenges of using the electric power in aluminum production, well, on the average in the world globally, they consider that 60% of emissions have to do with the production of primary aluminum. And these are the emissions due to the production of electric power. So in different countries, we have different types of power generation, and most of them are about the generation that has to do with fossil fuels. So one of the key goals of the international community and the international companies is energy transition and the transition of aluminum production to alternative sources of power generation, which will make it possible to significantly decrease carbon footprint of the global aluminum production, and that will significantly decrease the climate burden. As to the structure of energy consumption, about 99% of energy comes, in fact, from carbon-free or low-carbon sources of energy. So what Polina was talking about in her previous presentation demonstrates the following. She had a slide with the carbon footprints from different types of generation, that's solar, wind, energy, and so on. There is no generation that is entirely carbon-free. So there is at least some footprints these alternative power generation sources leave. So GenPlus, we did a study starting in the year 2000 on the greenhouse gas emissions from the water reservoirs of our major hydroelectric power stations. So the 4 major hydroelectric power stations on the Angara and the Yenisei rivers were measured in line with the international IHI methodologies. That's the International Association of Hydroelectric Power. So we involved the experts from Syntec company. To start with, back in 2020, they helped us train the experts that would do such measurements, and they helped us teach them the international methodologies in measurements. So in line with these data, the emissions of our hydroelectric power stations make, on the average, depending on the hydroelectric power station, vary from 2 grams per kilowatt per hour to 7 grams per kilowatt an hour. So this really is one of the lowest indicators, and it is in line with the best indicators for the real hydroelectric stations in the world. So we are continuing further research that has to do with the accumulation of carbon on the bottom of water reservoirs in Krasnoyarsk gas. We recently completed our research. In line with this research, the balance of carbon in the water reservoirs was negative, I would say. That is, carbon sediments in the bottom of the reservoirs, and it does not make it time to split in the carbon dioxide and methane. So basically, this is pretty much about the dumping, the disposal of carbon. There it becomes a landfill of carbon. In the bottom sediments, in the river bottom sediments. Now, we are currently considering the emissions that have to do with man-made properties of these water reservoirs. So we measure methane, and I've just referred to some figures on methane in the equivalent of CO2. Considering the fact that the aluminum facilities or plants are an object for the production whereby energy supply is truly critical, it's a critical indicator of the dependability, the reliability of power supply. All the facilities are connected to the network. They all have at least two alternative inlets of electric power in order to ensure the stability of energy supply in case some emergency strikes. So an important issue at all times is how do you go about calculating correctly the energy mix for such plants. In 2016, 2017, we worked out a methodology on how you could calculate the energy mix for the nodes of energy systems our plants are connected to in terms of the balance of the consumption and the generation in the network. But altogether, with the internationally recognized tool, the proof of low carbon origins of power are either direct agreements or the certificates on the origin of energy, if direct contracts cannot be signed. Now, as to the rules for energy supply in the Russian Federation, only the participation of the bulk wholesale market of electric energy can have direct agreements with the generator. That is, if a consumer is not a participant in the wholesale market, the only way to prove the green nature of the energy is a green certificate. At some point from 2019 to 2020, we had the onset of the IREC international system operations here. So we were the larger player in the market on the implementation of the certificates under this scheme. In 2022, IREC left Russia. So this niche was taken by other players in the voluntary market. In particular, we worked very closely with the Carbon Zero company, and we are still working successfully with Carbon Zero. From the beginning of this year, and at the end of last year, the law became operational in Russia on the green attributes of energy. So starting at about this time, they started a whole new era. That is, all the producers of energy in Russia have to, should they use the renewable energy sources, they should get registered in the system, and they should register with their own attributes. All our hydropower stations are registered in this system. So talking of cooperation between N+ and Rusal, and Rusal is a company close to us. All the aluminum plants in Siberia have direct contracts with your hydroelectric stations, and they get the green energy based on these agreements, alongside with the attributes, which makes it possible for us to ensure the compliance with the international requirements and the rigid requirements set by CBAM, where the number of tools and the range of tools you ought to have to prove the green nature of your energy is quite limited. We're working on developing our green generation. We're planning the construction of a number of other hydroelectric stations. We're considering the construction of the hydroelectric station in Omsk. And we really are hopeful that this will make it possible for us to boost our capacity, in particular to provide the green energy not only to our enterprises, but also to other enterprises in East Siberia, which are located in the same energy system. So on my side, I guess this will be it, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Владислав, выключен микрофон.
Vladislav, your mic is off.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for the recalling about Mike and the presentation. I have a short question about the last part. You said that your company is developing new hydropower plants. What do you think about how renewable energy certificate market could support your decision or the development of that kind of projects in Russia? Or at this point, you are looking for different instruments to develop that kind of project?
Okay, if we will talk about renewable energy certificates. So at the moment in Russia, there is no so big market, such kind of instruments. Of course, we would like to have more demand on that, and we expected that demand will be rise in future and increase. But anyway, we have at the moment situation that only few amount of attributes we can sell outside our group. And of course, the cost of certificates is not so high, and it's a very small input in the financing of such kind of new project, unfortunately. Of course, it would be nice to have maybe more higher price for certificates and attributes and more demands for that. But anyway, at the moment, it's just for us, it's just possibility to get some money for investments in our new projects, but of course, it's not enough for that.
Thank you for your position. Yeah, I agree. I suppose it is like two-way road, and consumers also wait for additionality from that kind of instruments as certificates. That's why, for example, in our standard, we tracking specifically certificates from the power company that that are ready to mark this money from the certificates market and reinvest it in a new kind of project. Thank you, Alexey, for your point of view from generation and industrial consumer perspectives. Now we move on to next speaker, which is Arsenij Avtukhov from Savcombank. We have already discussed today that energy transition requires enormous financial resources and long-term investments. But banks will play a huge role in that, but the energy transition also have an impact on the financial sector and banks too. So could you please share your thoughts about this topic for us? Thank you.
Да, уважаемые слушатели, коллеги, добрый вечер.
Dear colleagues, dear listeners, thank you very much. I'm going to talk in Russian today. Thank you so much to the previous speakers for giving us an opportunity to go in depth into some particular segments of the global energy system. I would like to start my presentation with giving you a brief outline of the main types of energy transition we are now witnessing, and then to talk about how it impacts the energy system. Now, what's changing in energy globally in the energy sector? $3 trillion last year went into global investments, and now about 2 trillion are the pure energy and the accompanying networks. The rest is storage. Now, what's noteworthy is that the investments in the pure generation exceeded the investments into fossil fuel. At the same time, we see that the key growth of the capacity took place in China. The major driver were the Chinese wind and solar energy. And we also see that the renewable generation has exceeded 30% of the global production of energy, but fossil fuel still dominates in energy consumption outside the energy market. Now, what is this all about? This means that we are observing the structure of the demand for project funding and lending of the energy systems, and also of the projects that ensure the flexibility of the energy systems. We also see a risk of the devaluation of assets in the traditional energy. And also we see the growing risks of volatility of energy prices, which may trigger systemic risks for the national and global economies. Now, how does this impact the banks? Well, clearly among the key channels, we have the new risks. That is the potential implementation, the potential occurrence of credit risks. That is the reinforcements of trans-border regulations, the introduction of trans-border duties and taxes. Then also competition may increase the ability, the creditworthiness of the borrowers, also the physical risks, the immediate direct damage due to the occurrence of the natural and real climate risks. This is what is oftentimes talked about. Now they talk also about the operational and legal risks. Rarely, though, we understand there is a need to invest into the monitoring of climate data to develop new IT platforms. We see it in our local financial systems, but having talked to foreign colleagues, I completely understand that this is also available in the regional financial systems. We also understand the significance of legal risks is growing, the greenwashing related risks, or the insufficient disclosure of climate risks. However, the risks are not the only channel of impact of energy transition of the bank. We completely understand that this opens up new opportunities for the banks. We see that the demand is growing for green project funding. The lending is in demand, the sustainability bonds as well. And also the demand is growing for the preparation of transition plans for corporate clients. Now, talking of a specific regional financial system, we see for a long time the Western countries have been taking the lead. In particular, they've actively developed the systems of non-financial reporting. They introduced the climate stress test. We've even seen the one-off cases when the local regulators will would move on to the fines for in compliance with expectations on climate risks. At the same time, we see the situation is not at all that homogeneous, and then in individual systems, we have seen the regulation. Talking of China, the Chinese Republic has built a multi-layer system of financing. They've introduced actively into the financing system both the green bonds and the green credits. This is available in many local financial systems as well, but the unique experience we see, that is the pilot green financial zones and other creative examples of financial structures demonstrate their worthiness, and also the requirements have been made more rigid for the green bonds, and that is the potential risk that has been around in many financial systems, but now we see the first example of its occurrence. Now, considering the developing markets outside China, in 2022-23, we've seen the slowdown in the market growth for sustainable bonds, but right now these markets are developing stably, and on some occasions they even grow very fast. One of the key problems for the banks in the developing countries is the worth of capital, the cost of capital. We've got to very carefully keep an eye on this problem, because exactly the bank capital is the driver for the banks to be able and willing to fund the specific sustainable development projects. Now, talking of our local market, it would be beneficial to highlight the structure of the developments of the Russian financial system in the context of sustainable finance. So, until 2023 in Russia, they've had the construction of the sustainable funding system. They also developed the standards of sustainable bonds. They established the first national taxonomies. Now, in parallel to that, we've seen the active development of the sustainable bond market. But unfortunately, the green status does not affect the profitability and the systemic greenium. At the same time, we're discussing the creation of the national system of accounting and standardization. And in this sense, our approach to the development of the national financial market is synchronized with what we see elsewhere. It's synchronized in terms of the direction. However, this whole architecture is in the making of. Now, regarding the overall direction, we're synchronized with the global practices in terms of how the attention grows to climate natural risks. We see that this year the climate stress testing has taken place. The Bank of Russia has published a number of recommendation letters in consideration of the climate risks. They published a methodology on preparing the plans to moving to the low carbon model of functioning, and it's noteworthy that the Bank of Russia recommended that the banks consider such plans when they evaluate the requirements and the capitals. Now, some structural challenges the Russian financial system faces in line with the energy transition. Our market is clearly very dependent on the carbon borrowers. What also takes attention is the limited access to global capital. We understand that the sanctions decrease the possibility to attract the funds from foreign investors, international investors, targeting sustainable development. That is why we many times have highlighted the importance of sustaining the international cooperation and continuing it. And I believe many of my colleagues are very pleased to be speaking at this event. It is noteworthy that, as I was talking about the regression in some individual foreign financial systems in terms of the development of the sustainable markets, one of the examples, in my view, of such a situation could be the fortune of the NZBA Association. Sovcombank, as were the last Russian bank to become the member of the alliance, and we're carrying on with our work as part of the alliance, including cooperation with its other representatives, and we keep up our commitment to the climate goals that we have set to ourselves as participants of this event. Now, the limitation of access to the global capital means to our local financial system that the role of the national infrastructure will be growing in sustainable finance, and so will the role of its representatives, like the development institutes, as well as the smaller and fragmented participants of the market, like, for instance, one-off investors. We see that in spite of the slowdown of the bond market, the share of one-off retail investors is growing in the latest issuances. Now, talking of the latest innovations, last year we saw the first example of stimulating regulations in our market. The Bank of Russia developed the infrastructure that makes it possible to bring down the risks on the green credits and the green bonds in this market. So we welcome this, and we have many times spoken on the need to introduce such incentives. In Russia, we have seen the first issuance of the green bonds that envision this kind of structure that brings down the risk of the this year. One-off retail investors have participated, and I know some of them. Now, another thing that's being marketed right now is 2 more such issuances, and I hope they will collect a book of requests, at least. Now, to conclude, I think I ought to note the key trends that are waiting for us as a local financial system further on. In the first place, I think the role of portfolio diagnostics will be growing, as well as the scenario analysis, including for the small and medium-sized banks. In one of our panels as part of this conference, we have said that one of the trends is very likely to be the growth of the share of significant credit organizations, and the lending in Russia. Also, I believe we will see the developments and the penetration of the best practices, that is, the construction of the roadmaps, considering the physical and the transition risks, the use of national and international standards, in particular to assess the impact on risk matrices. We also see and expect that the significance of the work with the customers on transition plans will be growing, and the credit policies will be linked to the major borrowers of such plans. And this is something the Bank of Russia noted in one of my materials. I also believe that the product line for sustainable funding is going to develop. We have seen the green bonds and the social bonds emerging. I believe the last segment of the market will be growing. I will also dare expect that the volume and the share will be growing of the one-off segments of theme or subject bonds, like the bonds of technological sovereignty, and there will be emerging the retail products, such as green mortgage credits for energy modernization, cars, and so on. One of the key trends will be the integration of climate risks into the traditional risk management. So I guess this is where I should end. So I will be very happy to take any of your questions. Colleagues Vlad and other speakers, please feel free to ask.
Arseny, thank you a lot for the presentation. I have a short question for you. As you said, Savcombank is a part of Net Zero Bank initiative, and all of us know that your bank plays active role in the Russian market of both energy certificates and carbon offsets. I've already asked you that question. We have a short discussion today in the other session, but I also would like to add it to our energy transition discussion about some new constructional instruments and what do you think how banks in Russia are ready to use some new constructional instruments to support renewable energy, for example, virtual power PPA agreements or something like that. Thank you.
Если я правильно понимаю, речь идет о таком инструменте, как PPA и
Are you talking about
VPPA.
PPA and BPPA, right?
В принципе, когда мы говорим о роли банков,
When we're talking about the role of the banks in energy transition, we have two lines of thought in terms of the role that banks play.
может выступать как
We completely understand that the bank can be a lender for the energy system, but also a bank is the consumer of energy. So as the consumers of energy, we actively monitor the quality of the energy we consume. On a systematic basis, we calculate our carbon footprint, we compensate for it, we in fact, we're among the first banks that did the entire carbon offsets throughout the year for Scope 1 and Scope 2. So we believe that the tool you are talking about is a promising tool to stabilize our own expenditure for such operations. So we're considering it most actively. We're studying a way to use it. And also, I hope other banks will also follow our example. As these solutions become more popular.
Thank you a lot. Now I would like to remind our audience that you have a last chance to submit your question in the chat on the platforms where you are watching us. And after our presentation, we have the last one. We will pass these questions to our experts. Finally, we come to our last expert today, Ilya Nagaitsev, project manager at Earthhood. We talk about renewable energy today, hydropower plants, nuclear generation. But as we discussed in the very beginning, that in many BRICS countries, oil and gas sectors are also quite important for the economy. So I would like to ask Ilya about the strategies and technology that oil and gas companies are using now to support the energy transition. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vladislav. Let me continue in Russian.
Yes, please.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Dear colleagues, I am delighted to speak at the event of this level. I would like to thank the organizers and all the participants for this very detailed and comprehensive review of the subject. I would like to share some results of the analysis with it, the review undertaken by the leading oil and gas companies in climate. Oil and gas production is responsible for 15% of greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector. Clearly, bringing down the level of these emissions is important for the industry. It's also stipulated by multiple initiatives, including the GMP 2.0 initiative, is the decarbonization charter for oil and gas industry, the global methane initiative, and many others. Let me talk of emissions. 100% of companies report for the first and the second coverage for the direct and indirect emissions of greenhouse gases, and only half reports on all the other types of emissions. In particular, and mainly, this is the category on the goods acquired, the services acquired, the business trips of the staff, the delivery supplies of goods and services, and the use of the products acquired. This is the structure of greenhouse gas emissions from oil and gas companies in 2024. 77% is the greenhouse gas emissions. Is the other gas emissions, most of which fall with Shell, Chevron, and Total Energies, as you can see. The direct greenhouse gas emissions account only for 20% of emissions, most of which are with Gazprom holding. Again, because the company reports for the emissions for the entire holding, including the gas and the energy and the oil businesses. Half of the oil and gas companies we're analyzing set the quantitative goals 1 and 2 to bring down the emissions and the coverage. 30% of the companies have set their goal for all the 3 covered areas, and 25% have set the goal to achieve carbon neutrality. And again, there is an important trend here. Over the past years, many companies have amended the goals. For instance, the BP company has amended its goal. Previously, BP goal was to bring down the greenhouse effects by 2050. Now it sounds as attaining carbon neutrality, and also the company has stopped reporting for the other emissions. Now, in this slide, we have the initiatives which are graded by popularity with the company, and you see the renewable energy, methane, and projects of energy efficiency have become a well-established practice of the company, whereas the climate projects, the CCS projects, are one of solutions, as well as that for hydrogen fuel. We see on the right the cost of greenhouse gas emission decrease, and clearly the production of biofuel or the production of hydrocarbon has a lot of efficiency and produces a great economic benefit for the country. In this slide, we see the investments of the companies into the low carbon solutions in 2024. The overall volume of investments is $18 billion, and over half of all the investments are with BP, PetroChina, and Eni. Now, a few words in close-up about the initiatives. As to the renewables development, the goal is to increase the share of low-carbon energy produced by renewable energy sources in the total energy mix. It's the diversification by increasing the production of electricity from renewable energy and its transmission to the grid, and the purchase and sale of low-carbon energy certificates to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, it's also the reducing methane emissions. It's replacing the flame reactors by nitrogen. There are the trends in production of low carbon fuels due to the introduction of the commitments as part of KRC in 2027, many companies in 2022, in fact, announced the plan to produce aviation kerosene to meet the goals of the projects. The companies are introducing the energy efficiency activities. They do the streamlining of the equipment, and one most popular one is improving the energy efficiency management processes through automation, digital twins, artificial intelligence, and improving all the processes in the energy sector. Part of the companies analyzed are planning to implement the carbon dioxide capture project to diversify the sources of income. For instance, the Austrian company has in 2024 5 billion euros as income from CCS. The company also diversifies its business by increasing the share of electric vehicle charging stations. This in particular is true of Shell and Total Energies that increase the market share every year, including through the integration of the charging stations into the existing charging stations or petrol stations. Also bringing down the emissions of greenhouse gases while implementing the climate projects to produce carbon credits. So the companies, many of them are now doing their projects on the local national markets, but so the rabbit company in fact compensated 102 equivalents through the purchased voluntary carbon units, which served the improved supplies of the products with a low carbon footprint. On this slide, you see the split of the capacity of hydrogen fuel production through electrolysis at the stage of construction. So we see in most companies, hydrogen production is still under development, and that's part of the R&D initiatives. So to conclude, I'd note that the oil and gas companies are very active in promoting and implementing the climate agenda, and the portfolio of initiatives I have reported of is quite diverse. The focus is with implementation of less costly projects, which pay off sooner. That is the renewable sources of energy, methane emissions decrease, and improving the energy efficiency projects, such as the projects to produce the green hydrogen and CCS. CCH and hydrogen production are one of projects that are still under development and research. They are not yet as popular as we hope they will be. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. Thank you. That, I suppose it is a great final presentation that provide us some positive, that we could see that even oil and gas sector, this company really moving forward to energy transition. Maybe not as fast as someone expected, but still there is some positive development in that sector. So it's all about our presentations. Thank you for all our speakers, our experts. Now we have some questions from the audience, at least one. And this is question for Alex. As far as technologies are concerned, we need risk management, not exclusion. Would you agree?
I guess it depends how one thinks about risk management. Look, I mean, really, at the end of the day, there are hundreds of different ways in which we can get to our climate goals, but there's only two basic mechanisms. We've got to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere, and at the same time, we've got to increase our carbon sinks. So reduce the amount of gases going out and increase the absorption of those greenhouse gases. So if you can do that by increasing renewable energy expansion, then do it. If you can do that by carbon capture and storage from oil or coal production or energy production, then we should do that. I don't think any particular technology should be off the table, but ultimately we've got to be moving towards our goal. It's easy to lose sight in this discussion around the technicalities and the feasibility of various technologies and competitiveness and investment, lose sight of the fact that, ultimately climate change is a global challenge that affects all of us, but we also know will affect the poor the most. So there is this justice element that we need to think about. I'm very open to the idea of not taking any technology off the table, as long as it's getting us closer to our goal of addressing the very serious threat of climate change.
Yeah, thank you for the contribution. I 100% agree. Maybe other speakers would like to answer this question too. Okay. I suppose we have only one question from the audience. So I suppose we are approaching to the end of our session. First of all, I would like to thank all our speakers today, Alex, Anastasia, Paulina, Alexey, Arseny, and Ilya, for your time, your expertise, and your very honest and practical contributions. I would also like to thank your audience for joining us today. Your interest to our complex but very important topics, and for your questions. And of course, you and Global Compact National Network in Russia, who organized this session. And the session is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it or share it with your colleagues who couldn't attend the broadcast live. And that's all. Thank you very much for joining us today.